Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me here at the Duluth Art Institute for my live stream event for the opening up of my exhibit, Integument. Please be patient with us today. This is a new thing for me for sure, and I think it's probably new for a lot of people as we navigate this new time that we're in right now. But I appreciate that you are here to see the event and to hopefully get a good view of the exhibit. I also want to put a thank you out to the Duluth Art Institute for exhibiting my work, but also for helping me to get the work on the wall, literally, and also get the work out there online. So shout out especially to Amy Varsic and to Alyssa Swanson for your help with putting this show together. So you know the show does open today. The hours that you can view the exhibit in person are 10 to 3 from Tuesday through Sunday here at the Depot in downtown Duluth. I know that a lot of people are probably not sure whether things are open or not, but the Depot is open during those hours, so you can actually come and see the work live in person, take a walk around and look at it. There are a couple other shows also going on at the same time. In fact, all 3 shows that are showing here at the Duluth Art Institute are quite connected, which is kind of cool to see. They're all wrapped up in the material fiber. And so there's quilts, I guess you could call them that are in the John Steffel Gallery by Blair Truer. And then a lot of, I don't know, I guess Alyssa, I'd call those quilts as well as fabric, framed fabric pieces that she's gone in and looks like burned and then rethreaded and definitely played around with quite a bit. So very interesting to see the connection between the 3 exhibits. But today we're here at Integument, and what I'd like to do, first of all, tell you a little bit about these live stream events. I'm going to be doing them the first and third Tuesdays of every month during the show. So that includes today as well as first and third Tuesdays of November and of December. And they happen at noon. And the reason I decided to put this together is because of COVID and the fact that we're not out seeing each other as a community or as groups. There maybe obviously is no actual artist opening for this event. I will have a virtual opening, but I also wanted the opportunity for more of that conversation and one-on-one with people. So I decided to have these live stream events. Hopefully people will send in questions either during the live stream event or prior to the event itself so that I can answer those questions while I'm here. I also kind of wanted to just have an opportunity to continue work on one of the pieces that I have called Disperse. And the idea there is that it's a growing piece and it involves some sewing. And so if I can sew while we're chatting, so to speak, online, then that would be pretty fun as well. So the other part of today, what I'd like to do since the show does open today is to give you a tour of the exhibit. We don't have like a roller cart that works super well, so I am going to carry the computer around to look at the different pieces that are in the show. This might be a good time to ask questions if you have any about the work. I'll talk a little bit about the pieces and especially the materials or the process that was involved in making them, but maybe you have specific questions or maybe seeing it online is a little more difficult than seeing it in person, and so I can get a little more descriptive when I'm talking about the actual piece. So again, just be patient with kind of the moving around the space. Hopefully also, I'll stay looking normal, not looking pixelated as I walk through. We'll see how the Wi-Fi handles the situation of me moving around. Okay, well with that, why don't I go ahead and get started and walk around the space. And again, if people have questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going to start in don't know how to say it exactly, but I'm going to start in this end, I should say, of the space. It is one of the ways that you can walk into the gallery. And so the first pieces that we're looking at are my weavings, and the reason I'm bringing these up first is because they're kind of where this body of work got started, was with these weavings. I was thinking a lot about the materials that I already use, which I've worked a lot with paper, some of the process that I've already been using, which is working with layers, and then how to add volume to those aspects of my current practice. And so I really like the idea of weaving because, to me, you can take two surfaces and overlap them, and then in a way take two ideas and overlap them through the weaving. And I also like that weaving breaks the imagery up, and so that was unexpected in some ways. Like, I might draw on the paper, and then when it was cut and then woven, it has a very different feel than when it just is straight up drawn on the paper. So you'll see that a lot of the imagery, if you get in a little bit closer, there's either text or some sort of a graphite drawing on the paper. And for those of you who don't know a lot about weaving, I certainly haven't, I've been learning it myself about it. There's the warp, which is the vertical, and the weft, which is the horizontal. And so typically what I would do is either draw or write on the warp and then have the weft be blank, or the opposite, draw on the weft and then have the warp be blank. In this particular piece, there's actually text on both the warp and the weft. So the sort of the brownish colored is the warp, and then the graphite is the weft. So that may seem counter, but I actually drew it, even though it's the weft, I drew it vertically and then cut it horizontally and wove it through. So, and then each weaving, as I said before, I was interested in trying to find some volume. Each weaving has a backing that has wire in it. I know the light is a little tricky here, but I wove wire into the backside of each piece so that I could create the volume. So I'll bring you over to this other piece here.
Susanna.
Okay. Oh, in all my work, I'm sorry, I should say, we have someone asking the questions for me, so I apologize for that little interruption there. So someone has asked what the inspiration is for my work. All my work in the last couple years has been inspired by my interest in natural history. In the past, I've worked a lot with specimen collections, but this has sort of moved out of the inside and gone outside more. And I've been looking at process in nature, transitions in nature, but again, still the idea of how we interact with nature. And so, particularly on the weavings, I was interested in figuring out ways to juxtapose man and nature when I could. It's subtle, but it's thinking about natural processes, the idea of integument and the skin being an organic element, and then adding in text, which is a human construct into the work. But you'll see too with some of the other work that I'm going to move on to. Hopefully, at least, you'll see that there is definitely some organic and naturally inspired elements to it. I feel like in some ways they're animated for me. Some of the pieces that grew out of this show. So this next piece here might start to show that aspect I was just talking about. This is a piece called Release, and it includes all the smaller, I like to kind of call them organs, that are in this particular piece. And this specifically, this piece and one other were inspired definitely by process in nature. I did some reading on how seeds germinate and the different steps they go through in order for a seed to be released, to reproduce and then to be released into the world. And these are also inspired by an illustrator, natural history, or naturalist, I should say, as well, named Ernst Haeckel. If you haven't heard of him, he's got an awesome book called Art Forms in Nature, and there are these beautiful illustrations of different creatures, both plant and animal, and they're just so elaborately drawn, and so those also became an inspiration for these pieces. So each of these, this work, which is again is called Release, and another work which is called Hatch, which I'll show you. Each of these have a weaving in them that I actually kind of nicknamed a seed coat. And there's one of the pieces, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but one of the pieces is hidden behind the weaving. And then there's a series of different, in this case, organs throughout the wall. Each of these are made with wire. It's a wire frame that has been wrapped with hog casings, which is actual skin from intestines. And I really like the translucent quality of it. I like that, I added these little blue felted elements, and I just like how they are hinted at by looking through the skin. So that is the piece that's called Release. Okay, now we're going to move into the big room, and as we do, you'll notice that some of the different work is integrated together, so there might be a couple more weavings that you're going to see here as we look at this next main piece. So what the main work that you're seeing right now, which is sort of the yellowed colored paper shaped on the wall and on the floor, this piece is called Molt, and it's, again, all these together as one unit. And what's going on here is this is waxed paper. So if anybody has worked with encaustic before, it's a medium that's a lot of people use to paint with. But what I have used it for in the past is to you infuse it in a lighter weight paper, and it makes the paper appear real translucent. It also is nice because it stiffens the paper. So when it came to shaping it, it held its shape better than just plain paper would do. So that is what's going on in these. I've added little elements of thread to them. To me, they really are reminiscent of exoskeletons that you find, like where an insect sheds its exoskeleton and leaves it on a tree branch or by the side of the river, or a snake sheds its skin. And so that's what these are reminiscent of for me. And I feel like in some ways the thread work too, if you've ever encountered one of these exoskeletons, sometimes you can see sort of like filament coming off of the exoskeleton. So I like the idea of incorporating that into it as well. The other thing I like about working with this paper and working with the wax is there's a lot of scarring that goes on. If you can see all the little white marks, that's from all the folding and refolding of the paper. It leaves a lot of scars. I think that adds a really interesting texture to the material.
And then also I love the way that the light shines through it. So you can kind of see that in this particular one. Are there any questions about this work?
Yeah, somebody, how you come up with your titles?
With my, sorry?
Your titles?
Oh, titles. God, that's my least favorite thing to do. Definitely, I mean, the titles I've told you so far are Molt, that's this body of work here, and then Release was the hog casings. The weavings I, as a group, call husks. So you might see something of a pattern here. Definitely going back to what inspires me. Also thinking about the word integument, which is a biological term, a medical term for skin. And so tying in some sort of natural process when I can. So molting is that verb for when an animal sheds its skin. And so working that idea of the action itself, as well as you know, a natural process that animals go through as well as humans. I don't know, hopefully that helps to answer the question of where do I come up with my titles?
For sure. And then somebody wants to know how you get the text integrated into your readings. I don't know if that's source material.
So in terms of how I get, I'm going to go over to another weaving here. So how I get the text into my weavings, it was all graphite. The color, I guess I did show you the one that has a little bit of color in it. That is just a colored pencil. So before I cut the warp and the weft, I do the drawings or the writing that I'm going to do. So for instance, this is actually drawings with graphite on there, and you know, I had just a large sheet of paper. I drew it onto the large sheet of paper and then cut it. So that's part of actually why I chose the paper I did. It's a mulberry paper, it's called, and it's not only, well, it comes in rolls, so practically that was a reason I chose it, but not only it's like lighter weight, it's a thinner paper, it's also super strong. So it's gone through like a lot of bending and managed to not tear at all. So that definitely has been part of what has helped guide my decisions. Hopefully that answers the question though about how I got the text.
I think they usually ask about source material.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so the person asked more about where I get my source material, what the text, the words I actually choose. The first two pieces that I made, which were the ones that I was showing you, the words are a part and a part, and then the one that had the color in it, the words were apart and adapt. And so in specifically those two works, I was thinking about just again that relationship with nature and our decision whether we are a part of nature or we're part from nature, and sort of trying to create that dialogue both within myself and perhaps the viewer as well of, you know, how do you see yourself integrated in nature or not integrated in nature? You know, it's a lot of times an obvious question to be thinking about that, but I don't know if we on a daily basis think about it like with our actions. So that's, I guess that would be part of where I got source material. But that's a great question, and actually it'll bring me over to one of the other weavings, which is in the big room with Molt. This one is called Almanac, and so the source material for this actually is little anecdotes from this spring when COVID hit and I went outside a lot with my kids, and the different interactions that we had with the natural world throughout those hikes and stuff that we did this spring. And so it will be just sort of these little sections here. Each section is a specific day and a time of day and a specific interaction with some species, whether it's a plant or an animal. And sort of my reflections on that and how, I don't know, just the wonder that it brought for me. You know, I read a lot of natural history books, and one of my favorites is Annie Dillard. She wrote Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, and throughout that entire book, it's all anecdotes of things that she's run into and experienced. And, you know, even just reading her book, I feel like I'm there experiencing what she's experiencing. So I just thought I would bring a little piece of our, you know, the interactions that we had throughout the spring into this particular piece. So in terms of source material, that one is pretty specific for the text. Okay, move a little bit more through this. We're coming out of the big room, and now this is my setup for the live stream, so it's a little messy, but this is the last weaving, 5 different weavings, and this is also a drawing that is on this particular one. Okay, so here's another one that's similar in concept and sort of design as Release. And this one is called Hatch, excuse me, H-A-T-C-H. And so it's similar to Release. There's a weaving, or sea coat, as I like to call it, and then multiples of a particular material that's been shaped. And in this case, that material is roving wool, which, if you haven't heard of that before, it's the type of wool that's used for felting. And if you're not sure what felting is, this is felting. It's when, well, it's like when you take a wool sweater and put it in the wash and it shrinks. You can do that intentionally with wool to create shapes. So I've done that a little bit in some of these pieces, but also the main forms are made with that roving wool, and then it's dipped into paper pulp. And so you'll see that that paper pulp picks up, you pick that up a little bit in the texture of the roving wool. It also stiffens the roving wool a little bit so that it holds its shape as well when it's hanging on the wall. So again, as I talked about earlier, these were definitely inspired also by Ernst Haeckel's drawings, as well as the readings that I did on things like seed germination or shedding of skin. Okay. As we move down through the gallery, this is sort of as you are walking towards the corridor of the Duluth Art Institute. And so there are 3 pieces that go with molt, so the waxed paper that are over in this section of the gallery. There's this hanging one that is fun because it spins, and so it captures the light in different ways. And then there is one that's down on the floor here. Nature's kind of messy, and I like that idea, so I intentionally wanted to have some of them sort of scattered around so that it felt, sort of like going on a hike, I guess. And then this is the last piece that's part of molt. And then the last overall piece that I want to show is the seeds, which is called Disperse. And I waited till last because in part, these live streams I want to be adding to this particular piece. So on the floor, you'll see there are many, 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 many seeds. There's a little over 300 of them now, and we'll just see how far I get, how many I can make. So I'm going to bring you back to my little station over here, and we can talk a little bit more about the seeds themselves. Does anybody have any questions so far, or about any of the stuff that?
Somebody asked about, I'll just read it here, sorry. The piece is reminiscent.
Okay, so someone's asking about the pieces that are sort of reminiscent of a body or bodies, whether that's intentional or not. It's very much intentional. The weavings themselves are about 6 feet long, which I know is a little long for a body, but it allows for the body to fit within that space, I guess. And they actually are, again, this is the weavings, they are shaped around bodies as a start, and then manipulated a little bit more after that. And then the person asked about another piece that was like a body, and I'm guessing that means the one that was hanging and spinning that I showed just a few minutes ago. Might have been another weaving. Okay, probably is the one that I showed just a few minutes ago. It is, yeah, I call it larva. That's my nickname for it because it sort of feels like larva, but also, you know, that long, skinny shape that it's taken on for sure is sort of body-like. And so since those particular pieces are a lot about shedding of not only skin, but sort of self, that to me, making it more elongated and like a human body makes a lot of sense to me. Because, I mean, anytime, I don't know, I shouldn't say all artists do this, but anytime I work with art, this certainly is a reflection of, you know, what's going on in my mind and the thoughts that I'm having. Work in recent years has a lot been about aging and going through that process and how it ties into, you know, being a part of nature, but also just as a human in that process of letting go, shedding skin, letting go, moving on. But then the object itself, the weaving or the larva can, you know, be a record of that and be also a way to hold on to it, you know, hold on to that past a little bit through memory or through just having that object on hand. So yes, for sure. The long answer to that question is the human body is always integrated in, whether subtly or not, in part to address that interaction between humans and nature, because we are a part of nature, and so we go through the same processes in a lot of ways. The hardest material I've worked with. Yeah, I assume not hard as in physically hard. Boy, they all definitely present their moments of being challenging. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to shape paper without any structure of any kind or any assistance from say wire or the wax, and that was more challenging than I had hoped. I'm sort of new to sculpture. I mean, I have a background in photography and very two-dimensional display of my work, and so it's only been in the last, say, 5 years that I've been doing, even less, probably 3 to 5 years, that I've been doing more sculptural work. And so maybe this is obvious, but it seems, you know, it's a new way of looking at things and a new way of understanding how to see and how to create and how to, obviously how to shape. But like I was talking to Amy the other day, I think I've done a lot with relief work where there are 3 sides visible, because then that, you know, you put the 4 sides out for someone to see, the 4 sides of a sculpture out for someone to see, and it's like that one side always looks bad, or at least that's the point I'm at, is like trying to figure out how to make all 4 sides look good. So relief works nice because then that 4th side can be up against the wall, and so you kind of get around that problem. But I'm trying to push past that when I can. So that has been challenging, and I found that when I went to shape paper, it just wouldn't do what I wanted it to do, which again could be obvious, but like when you're new to sculpture and you think, okay, I just want to make a ball out of this rectangle, it doesn't work, you know, and so it just, it takes patience, and which I don't always have. So I'd say that was definitely one of the challenges. Probably the most fun has been the caustic wax. It's surprising what it will do for you. So. Well, I think then we'll call it a day for today, and then next time, which will be in 2 weeks at the beginning of November, the first Tuesday in November, I'll show you guys more about making the seeds, and I probably will even make some seeds while I'm sitting, and hopefully more questions will come up, and yeah, and then hopefully you get a chance, if you're here in Duluth or you're to visit Duluth, that you get to come in and actually see the work. Online's great. I'm glad that we get an opportunity to do this, but also seeing art in person, something that we've definitely been missing out on. So hopefully you get a chance to come down and see it. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to stop by and see the work. And if you have any questions following this, feel free to email me or message me through Facebook or Instagram. I think you can also probably contact the Duluth Art Institute if you need to get in touch with me for any specific reason. So, thank you very much.